Joining me now is criminal defense attorney Brian Claypool. Brian, thank you so much for being with us. Obviously, there are so many questions that are unanswered in this case. So before we kind of get into more details, let's talk about how this will all likely proceed, considering the suspect in custody is, as we now know, an undocumented migrant. How does that impact all of this?
Hey, Nicole, great to be back with you. Like Laura said, I think the biggest issue in this case is how did this killer get into our country? He's undocumented. Laura said, how long has he been in the country? That's huge, Nicole. And I would ask Jim Jordan of the House Judiciary Committee to launch an investigation into this murder. Why? Because I represent, by the way, Nicole, the mother of Kayla Hamilton. She was murdered and raped by an illegal El Salvadorian immigrant gang member back in July 2022. Jim Jordan did a great job of investigating this. And we need to look at it from two angles. How did this guy get into the country illegally? Was he properly vetted? Did they not vet him? Did they check for any gang affiliations? And then, Nicole, the next question is, where's he been since he came into the country? The Department of Health and Human Services should be involved as well in this investigation to find out where he went. Because an illegal, if they cross the border, they can't cross unless they're properly placed with a sponsor, with a relative. So there needs to be a really comprehensive investigation into all of this, because this is as tragic as it can get. Beautiful young teenage girl.
Absolutely, yeah. And again, we know obviously the suspect, he is undocumented, but innocent until proven guilty. But as you said, at the end of the day, there is a mother that is now grieving the loss of her teenage daughter. Brian, we know security footage really played a key role in helping those investigators track down Govea Romero. How critical is that same footage going to be the case if it goes to trial?
Yeah, the surveillance footage is going to be critical because it will likely place him at or near the scene of the crime. You're showing a picture of the car. If the car is near the Medina home, that's going to help. You see him running. There's another picture, and then most important, there's likely going to be some kind of DNA evidence from the perpetrator on Lizbeth Medina's body. And I'm sure, Nicole, that forensic and analysts and medical examiners have done everything they can to pull up any kind of DNA before they arrested him. And then also you can do a deep dive into that car. If he drove that car to the scene of the crime, then they're going to be looking for any blood evidence in the car, for example, any hair fibers, or is there any DNA of this man under the fingernails of Lizbeth Medina? So my hope is that investigators have some of this forensic, tangible DNA evidence to put this guy behind bars forever. And I would not deport this guy, Nicole. Do not deport this guy. Prosecute him here. And this is Texas, by the way. And if he's convicted, the death penalty applies. Yeah,
and we saw some video there from Lizbeth's. There was a vigil held, purple, being her favorite color. You talked about DNA evidence. We know DNA does not lie. Again, we also know police are not releasing a lot of details, including the results of the autopsy report. You were just mentioning some of the things that may be found. How could that change things? And will they release those details, or is that something they will hold kind of close to the vest until this case potentially goes to trial?
Yeah, great question, Nicole. Usually medical evidence, medical examiner evidence, autopsy reports are sealed. It's really hard to get those reports released when there is a pending criminal investigation. So I don't think we're going to see a lot of that before the trial starts. But rest assured, Nicole, if this case goes to trial, that medical evidence, the medical examiner's report, the DNA evidence, that is going to be the centerpiece of the case. And what do I mean by that? Was there a struggle? Were there any bruises on her body? Were there any scratch marks on her body? Nicole, those are the things that medical examiners are going to be looking at to see if they can connect any of her DNA on Kim and his DNA on Lizbeth. So that's going to be crucial. And I'm sure they have some of that already, or else they would not have arrested this guy.
My last question for you, Brian. You know, police have not said right now if there was any sort of previous relationship between Medina and Romero, or if this was a random attack. But Brian, does that matter? Because, you know, at the end of the day, Lizbeth was 16 and her suspected killer, we know, is 23 years old.
I don't think it matters. In the case I have, Nicole, the Kayla Hamilton murder, she was raped and murdered because of a robbery. That was like a totally isolated event. So here we don't know whether it's just an isolated event or whether there was any texting. To get to your question, I mean, maybe there's some text messages they're going to go through Lizbeth's phone. You just showed that to see whether there was any communication between her and the killer. And that'll be interesting to see that. But look, they're going to have to trace where he was, too, in the days leading up to that. Maybe they can look at surveillance video. Did this guy have a job, for example, anywhere? Check video from that to try to see if he was communicating with Lizbeth. But look, Nicole, I'm going to leave you with this. I'm a single dad of a teenage daughter around Lizbeth's age. And I got to tell you, setting apart this criminal investigation, we need the House Judiciary Committee to figure out what happened. How did he get here? Why was he roaming around our country undocumented? And we need to fix the problem of letting these killers and predators across our border to kill innocent teens.
Yeah, there are certainly a lot of unanswered questions, you know, in many facets of this case. But certainly our thoughts go out to Lizbeth's mother, her family, her friends right now who are really grieving. Brian Claypool, thank you so much for your input.
You bet. Thank you, Nicole.